You're here, which means that you've found Spirit Crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Crumbs. I am your host, 𝗟𝘁𝗲𝘀𝘁. I am an intuitive reader and energy healer. So I have been thinking a lot lately about how my podcast is called Spirit Crumbs, but I have been talking a lot about some deeper topics lately, and I haven't gotten back to the core of the title. So today's episode is just going to be me catching you up on some of the spirit crumbs I've been following, because some of them are pretty crazy and they're coming in a lot of different forms, which I think is really interesting, and it helps kind of give some ideas of ways where you might not expect to get them. So just for starters, I have been asking a lot of questions of my guides and my grandparents in spirit, trying to get some signs about whether or not it's time for me to start thinking about doing this work full time or just in a bigger capacity than what I have been. And in the last few days, I have been receiving a lot of messages around really committing myself to this work and being of service. That's something that I've been asking a lot, is how I can be of service. So one of the things that came up was yesterday, I randomly was thinking of this song by Cat Stevens, and it's called The Wind, and it's only like 2 verses. It's really short. I can't even remember how I found it. I guess I probably heard it a long time ago, but in the last couple of months, I made a playlist for just some songs that make me feel connected to spirit. And it came up on the suggested list, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this song. So I added it. And yesterday I thought of the song, but whatever I was doing, I don't remember what I was doing at the time, but I was just like, okay, I don't have time to look this up right now or see why I'm thinking of this, but maybe I'll listen to that playlist later, who knows. So I didn't, and then later on in the evening, I decided to watch a few episodes of How I Met Your Mother, and the song came on that show, and I was like, what a weird combination, because it's kind of just like a really light, like more spiritual, it's basically a poem with music. And I was like, okay, I need to look up the lyrics for this. And when I did, I was like actually in tears, because I've been thinking about this so much in the last few days, since the Lionsgate portal, actually. I've been really just feeling like this is the work I'm meant to do. Like my coaching, healing, readings, all of that work is just like what I'm meant to do. And so in the lyrics, it talks about connecting to the wind of your soul. And it just is something that it doesn't matter how many times I think about it, my heart just expands every time I think about doing this work. So that was a big sign for me, where I was like, okay, there's a reason I was being gifted this. And then I guess probably before that, before I listened to the song or saw the lyrics, I had gone for a walk in the Arboretum, and on my drive there, I was just surrounded by red cars everywhere, which is my sign with one of my grandfathers who passed. And when I was driving, like every intersection that I'd stop at, the first car closest to the intersection in the other directions were all red cars. And then I ended up following a red car. I had a red car let me go and then follow me. There was a lot of weird stuff. So I was like, okay, you're around. So like, I'm asking you, like, what do you think? Like, should I really pursue doing this more? Should I share more about this? Because I don't talk about my offerings as much. Just post them on Instagram kind of once, and I feel like I need to put more effort into it. So I opened up my windows when I got home because it was beautiful out, and in the middle of doing my own reading for myself and my cards, I just randomly was like, I feel like just standing and looking out the window, which I don't really do in the middle of a reading, but I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. So I got up and I looked out, and there was a single white feather just like floating outside my window. And I live on the 6th floor of an apartment building. So I was just like, that is so weird, because it like it was floating up, like it was like something was keeping it at eye level so that I would see it. Like it was floating up and kind of just hovering, and then it like gradually went down into the trees. And I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. So you are with me. Thank you for supporting me. I got some really supportive messages in the rest of my cards. And then when I finished my reading, I was like, I'm just going to go stand over there again because the breeze is really nice. So I went over to the window again, and there was another feather, the exact same kind of way, just floating and like floating upwards and then like hovering for a while and then just gradually floating down. And I was like, wow, that is for sure a sign. And then as a joke, I was like, obviously I'm probably not going to see this happen again, but if you want to send me just another related sign or another sign, then I'm going to trust that I'm heading in the right direction by focusing my energy in this. So I went around the corner, got a coffee, went over to stand by my sliding door to look out, and this hawk that I haven't seen in a few weeks went right by my window and was flying around again. And I was like, okay, that's my third sign. Clearly these are manifesting way faster than usual, because it often takes like a while for me to find the sign. I'll know what I'm kind of looking for, or I'll know that I'm waiting for a sign, but sometimes it'll be later that day or the next day. But this was like 3 in a row. So, well, 4, including the cars. So then I went on to whatever else I was doing throughout the day. And today I just felt this really strong feeling, like my guides and my grandparents were around me, and I pulled similar cards, and I just thought, you know what, I really do feel like there's something about today where like I'm going to be getting messages. And so I actually wrote in my journal, I wrote about how I feel really committed to this work and how I really need to let go of a few things first before I can do that. The other thing that was interesting was that the throat chakra came up yesterday and today. And so I was like, okay, I have to record this podcast episode. I'm recording it on Monday and I post them on Tuesdays. Usually I do them over the weekend. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what the message is, because it was related to this work. And I have another episode I'm going to do as well that came to me this morning. But I was like, okay, so that could be what that message is. And then today in the initiation circle, we had like an intention ceremony, because there's so many new people and it was an opportunity for us to get to know one another in some small groups. But before that, Danielle went live and was talking about people resigning from their jobs and going into spiritual work. And then she started the circle with that, our initiation circle intention ceremony. And that wasn't her plan. And she even said, I don't know, I'm talking about this. And I was like, I definitely am feeling this energy, like this is for me. And in one of our breakout rooms, something that came up for me was like that I see myself as an artist and a healer. And those are two things that I always come back to. And obviously I just did a degree in studio art, and I've been doing a lot more of my energy healing than my other offerings, other than my coaching has been a little bit more popular lately. But I started thinking about it, and that's what it kind of came to me, was I was thinking, yeah, I guess that's what I would see myself as the most. And then through us all discussing different things, the people in my group were also saying that I'm a teacher. And I was like, that's also true. I do love teaching. And it was just interesting, because I think that's where the coaching comes in my offerings. Because I was thinking the other day, trying to think of like my reasons for doing everything that I'm doing, being very intentional. And with the coaching, it seemed to just happen naturally. It wasn't something that I sought out to do, but then I realized that's what it is. I'm passing on from my experience. And that's also why I have this podcast, because I feel like when you're starting out, it's sometimes hard to find examples of what you want to do or people that are already doing it. And sometimes it just helps to hear different people's path that they took, because everyone gets to where they are in a different way. So people could all be, there could be 5 different energy healers and none of them would have the exact same story of how they got to that point. And so that was really super helpful, just connecting with other people, which I've been trying to do more often lately when I'm thinking of it, trying to just, if there's somebody I want to reach out to, I try to just reach out to them at the time. And so one of the things that stuck out in one of the conversations that came up around this topic of leaving work was that it was said that instead of waiting for the rug to get pulled out from under you and have like the universe kind of like push you in a direction, sometimes you realize if you're still like waiting on that sign, that it's because you should just do the thing, right? Like there's not always going to be something that does it for you. Sometimes it's, and I talk about this a lot, of it like co-creation and how we have to take action as well. There are times to sit back, and I know for myself, I've been in kind of getting the messages to just sit back and receive, but I think I've been getting these messages, and that's what I'm receiving, is all of these different ways of telling me that it's getting closer to be that time. And so it was a beautiful session. And then shortly after that, I was talking to my papa, one of my grandfathers that passed, out loud and saying like, you know, I really want to do this work. And I feel like these are all messages telling me that I'm meant to do this work. Maybe it's not immediately, but I do feel like there's a shift coming this fall. Like I'm getting, like my heart's like pounding when I say that, and I'm getting chills. So, I was just like out loud to him, like, I don't know what the sign is. You know, I'm not going to ask for a particular sign, but I'll know when it's the sign, because that's what happens. So it happens with the cars, with the feathers. I was like, you know what, this will be the 3rd kind of sign I'm asking for. So let's just see what comes up today. And then a post was made that I happened to come across asking for someone to do healing. And I reached out. It turns out we were both available at the same time. And I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I did a session. I felt very strongly, more so than usual. I felt the physical spots that needed to be worked on. I went through the whole session. It was just a short 20-minute session. And this person that I did the healing for was telling me specific things they experienced. They knew that I used a selenite wand. They could feel in their 3rd eye a lot of energy, and I had an amethyst there for them. I showed them both things, and they said they were excited. They were like, that's what I saw, like the size of the stone that I used for the amethyst, the wand. And they could feel a lot of other things that I had been doing, which was really crazy and amazing. And I think it was a great validation for both of us. And then when we finished, they actually said to me, you know, I thought I felt like a godfather energy or something. And I was like, okay, I have grandfathers and one that I was speaking to. And then it seemed like there were a few different people showing up, because there was a sign for a couple other people. But the 2 things that stood out was that she really, really kept feeling this elephant energy. And I have an elephant stone that I have sitting out. But I also thought to myself, you know what? I was getting the throat chakra card earlier, and a white elephant is the sign for the throat chakra. So I was like, that could be another thing telling me to speak up more and use my voice more. And then I looked it up in my animal spirit book, and it said that basically it's committing to service as part of your purpose and being very persistent, and that you can move through whatever's stopping you, and saying to do away with anything that you sense is not right for you, and reconnecting to the divine. And that's, I've honestly felt for the last few days, like my crown chakra has been tingling. Like whenever I consciously think of connecting to spirit, it's just been very clear in the last few days. And I do feel like it's Scorpio energy. I actually pulled the Scorpion card from my animal deck and the full moon in Scorpio card this morning. And I was like, felt like that was a validation that it was like kind of, I think, some sort of activation with this I knew this first quarter moon, which I talked about last week in Scorpio, was going to be big for some reason for me. Like I just felt that energy. So anyways, when I got that message, I was like, oh my gosh, that's probably why you're seeing the elephant for me. And then she said she kept getting the reference to milk and the land of milk and honey. And so for her, she was saying that connected to some sort of a past life. And I was like, I don't have a connection to, you know, that as a place or anything. And I looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, hang on. I looked, and I have the book. I don't know if you don't have this book, you should get it, but it's called Milk and Honey, and it's a poetry book with some illustrations by 𝘬𝘁𝘂𝗺𝘁. And I love this book. I've read it a few times, and I saw it on my shelf and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder. So I pulled it out, and I totally didn't remember until I pulled it out that it actually has like one of those cloth bookmarks in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, hang on, I bookmarked it. Let me see what it says. And I could not make this up if I tried. So the first, it's on this page close to the end, and on one side, it's something about art, and on the other side, it's kind of about service. And so I'll read these to you really quickly. So on page 194, it says, your art is not about how many people like your work. Your art is about if your heart likes your work, if your soul likes your work. It's about how honest you are with yourself. And you must never trade honesty for relatability. And so it's called to all you young poets. But for me, I've been talking so much about the throat chakra and about sharing honestly. I'm still working on my book off and on, but also even just in my posts, I want to start sharing more again. It's just I've been kind of gathering my thoughts about how to do that. But even within my podcast, I feel like sharing my journey more. I know my grief episode I've gotten a lot of beautiful comments. Thank you to everyone who's reached out about that one. But I do think that talking more about those things are going to be important. And then I think I do really need to get back into doing art. I think I was just kind of in a little bit of a trauma response to it for a while because it was so focused on completing things for school that I've kind of avoided it for a while. But then on the other page on 195, there's this drawing of a plant in a pot, which I watered all my flowers today and like fertilized them and felt really connected to them this morning. And then this is a short one, and it says, give to those who have nothing to give to you. And then this one is called 𝘂𝘵𝗵, and in brackets it says selfless service. And of course, this was me just offering to do a healing session for this person who needed one. And I have been thinking lately about doing that more often. So for me, it was so beautiful that we connected, and that I was the one to see the post first. And I think that it's just such an interesting thing when you do ask for a sign. And so this was my sign, I know, from my grandfather, because it was so synchronistic. And we had both, the same person that I connected with here, we had both just before that seen this other post and commented the same thing at the same time. So I just really feel like asking for the sign is the first step. And I think we've talked about this before in other episodes, but trusting that you will get the sign too is just as important, and being open. And so if I hadn't thought to look up, because often what will happen is I'll just be like, if I'm not sure what the sign is, like if I didn't know what milk and honey was, I'd be like, well, thanks, I'll see if something comes up. But I sat for a minute with it, and then when I saw myself staring, and like I told you guys before, I think in another episode, that I will sometimes just be staring at my bookshelf at a specific spot. I'll look at the titles that are in that area, because sometimes that's what happens, is I'll be drawn. Either I just know, because I know some of my books I know so well that depending on what I'm trying to figure out or getting a sign for, I'll know what part of the book it's referring to. And so with this, it was bookmarked. And even we were both saying, like, you couldn't make this up if you tried, right? Like, this is just the way it comes through sometimes. I wanted to share these few things. It's not a lot of things, but, I just wanted to share these because, that was a song, a book, a feather, seeing cars. These are all different things that came to me. And like even seeing a post in a group and following the urge to reply to it. I think that also another sign that came up for me was I've had 2 sessions in the last week where I was more open about how they were going to go. I didn't try to control it. And what they ended up being was a combination of card reading and coaching together. And then the last one also had some energy healing. And it was just a really beautiful way of kind of spending time going through different modalities to look at a situation. So instead of just doing energy healing, just doing card reading, it was kind of nice to put it together. And then I ended up creating an offering around that because I kept thinking of it and it just all channeled through the name of it and everything. So I just posted it today. It's called Soul Blend Sessions. And the idea is that there's an intake form and you can let me know which modalities you'd like to experience. You can let me know which one you want the most of. You can let me know what's going on with you. And then if you're really not sure and you just know you want a combination and you just really want a session, but you don't know what you want, you can also just let me know. And if it's that type of a session, we'll start with the card reading, because that often gives us an insight into what's going on and what you might need. And then we can go from there and see if we go right into energy healing, or if there's some coaching that comes up on both sides of it. Maybe there's a little bit of coaching, we do some energy healing, something else comes up for you. It's really meant to just help you if you know you need support, you're just really not sure. And sometimes we just want all the sessions. I know when I was first starting out, I wanted to try everything, but my budget didn't accommodate for that. Sometimes your time just doesn't. You're like, I only have an hour and I don't know what to pick because I want everything. And so these are 90-minute sessions and they're $222 Canadian. And I do have a session package that I created. So there's 3 sessions for $588 instead of $666. Or there's one that I created that's kind of channeled through me, where it's taking these sessions and then applying one to each chakra. So there's an opening session for us to just feel out what you need in general, do one of those sessions for that. And then for each chakra, you can decide what you need. So I do light worker coaching, but also shadow work coaching. So we can see if, one of your chakras, maybe you don't feel like you have a lot of shadows in that area. Maybe you're already a healer or light worker. You're really open in your third eye, and let's just say you want to do mostly light worker coaching, you want to do more intuitive development there, or see what messages are coming up. Maybe we don't do a lot of shadow work coaching, but we do energy healing, intuitive card reading, and then we do a bit of intuitive coaching based on what comes up. So it's just meant to be a more open type of session, but one where you get so much for that time, because I know everyone, I'm sure like me, values their time a lot. So I just wanted to put that out there now. I also have, of course, my other regular offerings, and my Grief Unbound group will be opening on next Sunday, the 22nd, on the full moon in Aquarius. But feel free to reach out with any questions about any of my offerings. The next episode is going to be on how to choose the right healer or intuitive person to work with. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.